Welcome to the Sage Family Podcast,
where we explore natural, homeschooling, gentle parenting,
simple living, and family adventure.
I'm Rachel Rainbolt, the Sage Parenting Coach, coming to you from the Pacific Northwest, where I live wild and free in connection with my 3 wildlings and the Papa Bear in our fixer-upper on the beach. This is episode 44, and today I'm here with Desirae Endres talking about habits. Desirae is a mom, wife, host of the Minimalish podcast, and a former classroom teacher turned work-at-home mom. Her goal is to give women the tools they need to dive into the version of realistic minimalism that fits their family best, and to live more intentionally, focused on what matters to them. So join us around the campfire and let's get living the family life of our dreams. This episode is all about habits, or a daily rhythm to proactively meet your needs as the parent. And the perfect companion for this episode is the all-new 8 Secrets to a Nourishing Morning Routine workbook that you gain access to when you become a patron of this podcast over on Patreon at patreon.com/Sage Family. This new freebie, which I am very excited about in case you couldn't tell, will provide you with a template on which to build a morning and evening routine that is research supported and will reduce your struggles by upping your self-care. For $2 a month, you can join the Inner Circle and gain access to the 8 Secrets to a Nourishing Morning Routine workbook, in addition to monthly video Q&As. For $5 a month, you become a sing-along friend and will also get a podcast shout-out where I express my gratitude to you right here on the show. For $10 a month, you become a fire starter and will also get early access to new book chapters as they are written. And for $20 a month, you become a bonfire bestie and will also receive the entire Sage Family ebook collection. And on that note, I want to send out a special thank you to new $5 patrons. Thank you, Lucy Frost, Frankie Aitchison, Joanna Garnto, Audrey Moore, Jacqueline Zapp Albin, Catherine Hennessy, Erin Dougherty Hunter, and Bianca King, who all became sing-along friends this month. Welcome to the Sage Family Patreon community, and I am so grateful for your support. One more thing I want to address right out of the gate is that this is not an episode about setting up a daily routine for your children. That is what the bucket system class is all about, providing soft structure for raising responsible, free spirits. You can learn more about that at rachelrainbolt.com/bucket-system. Of course, I'll link to that in the show notes as well. Now, the adventure of the week was a family bike ride along the waterfront. We used to ride bikes all the time back in San Diego with the littlest in the bike trailer, but when we moved to the Pacific Northwest, our bikes fell into disrepair and were outgrown. And when the littlest graduated to his own 2-wheeler, 5 bikes just could no longer fit inside our car along with all our people. So it was just something that sat on my future to-do list for far too long. This time of social distancing provided the perfect opportunity for us to focus on getting set back up for this activity that we all love doing together. So we installed a hitch on the minivan, ordered a 5 bike rack and a helmet for me, got a couple bikes serviced at our local bike repair shop, where we also bought a couple used bikes, all without any face-to-face contact. Then we were finally geared up to ride along this beautiful 7-mile round-trip local bike path that runs right along the waterfront. It was the best. After driving past this sweet spot for years and pining for this experience, we finally got to do it. The sun was shining, the kids were smiling, the seals were splashing. It was a wonderful day. And on the way home, we picked up some food to go, giving us a break from all the cooking and supporting another local small business. I've combed through all of the shelter-in-place orders at the time of this recording, and they all allow for being outdoors. So get outside and have some fun. Being in nature and moving your body are antidotes to the anxiety that is growing inside everyone right now. Keep 6 feet of space between yourself and other nature explorers and go for a hike or a swim or a climb or a row. We were overdue to invest some money into our bike situation, but going outside and playing is completely free. So here's what I want you to do. First, add go outside to your daily rhythm, even if all you can muster is standing barefoot in the grass in front of your house. Go outside one time every day. Second, research places in your area where you can go explore and play in nature. Make a list and visit one of those places each week. Think of it like your micro adventure menu. It is honestly the thing that helps me and my family feel the best. We feel the most like us, which is an oddly fleeting feeling during this pandemic. If you want to see photos and videos of this adventure, then head on over to sage.family on Instagram, note the new name, and follow along. And a disclaimer for this episode, just as in episode 43. This conversation was recorded before the coronavirus was a thing. While the tone might be a tad off given the current mood of the global community, this topic of creating a daily rhythm for yourself with essential touchstones is 1,000% more important now than ever. It's the thing I'm hearing parents cry out for more than anything else. I hear you. You're desperate for some self-care soft structure, and this podcast episode, along with the 8 Secrets to a Nourishing Morning Routine on Patreon and the Bucket System class for your kids, will give you everything you need right now in that department. You don't have to figure this out alone. Now, on with the show. You know her from the Minimalish podcast and from episode 31 of this podcast when we shared a conversation on contentment. Well, Desirae Endres is back today for a conversation on habits. Remind everyone who you are and what you're all about, Desirae.
So, hi, I'm so happy to be back on the podcast and honored to be back on a second time. I am a mom to a toddler, and I am a former teacher, former English teacher, and whenever I had Gemma, who is my 2-year-old now, I wanted to stay home. So I found a way to work from home in various different ways. And now I am doing that through sharing about how minimalism and just my family's specific version of minimalism has really helped change our life. And I aim to help empower others to kind of find their own version of living simply and do the same.
I love it. And I'm so happy to have you back. I enjoyed you so much the first time I wanted more.
Aw, that makes me so happy.
Okay, so let's move right in because this is something that I get asked about all the time, this topic that we're covering. I had originally thought of naming it routine, but then lots of people were assuming that I was talking about routine for the kids. And I really wanted to focus in on like the daily habits of self-care that we do as moms and as parents. So that's kind of what our focus is going to be. And I want to start with I want to start with the issue of struggles. So an intentional routine or conscious habits or a curated morning is really about meeting your needs proactively and holistically. So the first step is to get to the heart of what your needs really are. And the best way to do that is to look at what your daily struggles are. Those can point to your unmet needs. What are some struggles, Desirae, that an intentional routine can support?
Yeah, so if I think back to, I think as we talk through this today, there's so many routines that I think of that have really helped me, but 2 of them that I am going to just focus in on to kind of not be going all over the place is my morning routine and then just kind of a wellness routine in general. So I'll explain what that is a little bit later, but I think that when I look at my story, the struggles were really about just not having enough time, not being able to find the time to do the things that I needed to do to take care of myself. And I think that that is a struggle that building routines into your day can help. Really, any routine is going to help you kind of, quote, find the time because you are intentionally building that time into your day for whatever that thing may be.
Yeah.
And the other struggle that I think it helps is our mental load because we make so many decisions in a day. So having a routine, whether that's a morning routine where you might do reflecting or whatever spiritual thing you need to do, or whether it's like a wellness routine, like I said, I'll focus on this too, where you're taking care of your body, those things help us just do those on autopilot rather than think about when am I going to do this again, the time thing, or how am I going
Yeah.
to do this, or what does this look like?
Yeah, oh, so true. Like everything from anxiety to intellectual atrophy, which sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes like is a legitimate struggle for like full-time parents. Instead of treating the symptoms on the tail end, I'm talking about like preventing the illness on the front end. And that to me really is the definition of self-care. Like if you're experiencing symptoms of anxiety throughout the day, and I do this in coaching with parents too, like what can we put into the daily routine to proactively and holistically tend to that need on the front end so you're not just chasing around symptoms on the tail end.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, another reason having an intentional routine can be so powerful is because it can serve as stepping stones for bigger goals. Maybe you have an intention of decluttering. What is one thing you can do each day to progress toward that goal? Goals are not achieved in one grand moment. They are achieved in 1,000 small moments. Even, one example that people often bring up when I say that is like professional athletes. Like there's the big game. Nay. Professional athletes are one of the areas where I hear this the most. Like that victory is won every single day when they get up and they take that morning run or they, whatever it is that they're doing for their training. They're achieving that goal in those small everyday moments. So spend just 15 minutes every single morning before you eat breakfast cleaning out one kitchen drawer or grabbing 5 things for the donation box. Your values are the compass that points you in the right direction. Your daily habits are the steps you actually take. We, on average, make 35,000 decisions a day, which is like a general figure to the entire population.
Yeah.
But I would argue that like a stay-at-home parent makes way more decisions than that even because we're making all these decisions for other people too. So setting up some daily conscious habits, they front load so many of those decisions. So what are some intentions or goals that your routine is helping you to live in alignment with or achieve?
Yeah. So going back to kind of the idea of the struggle, the reason I'll talk about a morning routine. The reason I struggle, or the reason I started that, the struggle was that I was waking up so cranky and I was just starting, and that's because I was waking up because of a crying, you know, 10-month-old at the time that wanted my attention. And I just realized that for me, having to basically pop out of bed and be on for someone else all day, this little one that I absolutely love, it just wasn't how I wanted to be waking up. Like I wasn't ready right out of bed to do that. And some people can do that very well, and that's totally fine. But I realized that that was a struggle for me. And I didn't want to be the mom who is cranky and unorganized and confused for the first hour or more of my day. And that's just how it was going. So in my morning routine now, I'm able to the goal for me has been to just get my mind right for the day. And along the way, this has been over a year and a half that I've been doing this now. I've been waking up at least 40 minutes earlier than her when she's waking up really early. I wake up 40 minutes earlier. If she's waking up a little later, because her schedule changes too, then I'll wake up 2 hours before her. And that's what it looks like pretty much most days right now. But I do that so that I can have some time for myself, have that time for self-care, for breathing, not having to make decisions for someone else. And I go through some journaling. I have a journal that I created called Simple Morning Lists. I go through 5 lists each morning that kind of help me get my mind right and help me literally just align with who I want to be in that day. And I practice gratitude within that. And that helps me align for the entire day. And whenever I have longer times in the morning, I'll also work on kind of my creative endeavors with the podcast. And my podcast has really been created and built through a lot of mornings and a lot of nap times because we're still in the nap time phase. So that that has been a routine where I've really been able to build in what matters to me, and I've been able to also achieve a lot as well.
Yes. So, I mean, one of the reasons why I wanted you specifically to come on was because I've heard you talk about that morning routine before, and I love it as an example because it's so different from mine. So, I wanted to bring on someone who could provide that perspective. Like for me, all of my patron supporters get access to this like morning routine template. Where I write out the specific things that are in my morning routine, but just a little difference, is that I'm the opposite in the sense that I am my best self and my mind is most right when I can just wake up like in a cuddle with my little ones. And I've noticed that if I have to start the day before them for any reason, like if I have to jump up and go do a coaching call or record a podcast episode and I miss out on that like gradual waking with them, then I'm off like for the rest of the day. And so I just want to point that out. Like for the listeners out there, like there really are no rights or wrongs. It's just a matter of like figuring out what your needs are. And again, your struggles can help point to that, what your intentions or your goals are, and then to align that morning routine or how you start off your day with that. So just think about like what some of your intentions are, what some of your goals are. Even like a lot of people get excited when I talk about like debt freedom or financial independence. I even take goals and intentions like that. I weave those into my habits. Like, what is one thing that I can do every day to move myself closer to that goal or to better align myself with that intention? So I just want everybody to like get really excited and start to feel really empowered and think about those things.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing how you can take anything that is really important to you and the goals that you want to achieve and really look at it as this is totally achievable to me, but it's not something that it's going to happen all at once. It's something that we have to put into every single day. I talk about this all the time with just intentional living in general, or slowing down, or finding a pace that works for you and your family, or just being content. When we talked about contentment a year ago, what I've realized is it's literally daily work because it's something that we have to think about and reflect on daily. We're human. We get off. All the different things in life distract us from what we want and how we want to be living. So we have to remind us of those things every single day.
Yes, it's a practice. And once you know what things you want to hold space for, you're probably going to have to clear away some habits that you really don't need to hold space for. You need white space. So if you're struggling with letting some things go, try thinking through worst case scenarios. What would happen if I didn't do this? And chances are everyone would survive. So very often in coaching, when we get to the routine part, the first part, we're identifying the struggles, we're building things in proactively to support them, we're setting those intentions and building things into the routine to help them make progress on those bigger goals. But then the other piece is that you have to, we're building in the things that you really want, but we also have to let go of the things that aren't really serving you. And that it can be really hard, particularly for the full-time parent or particularly for a stay-at-home mom. So what are some things you were doing that once you got conscious with your routine, you were able to let go?
Yeah. So it's funny because the way I spend my mornings kind of helps me realize what it is that I need to let go of. Almost, I shouldn't say every single day there's a new thing I need to let go of, but it just in seasons, it's going to be different things. So I feel like it keeps me awake to those things because I start my mornings with this process, or it's just really, I just write out a list saying a process makes it sound fancier than it is, but of surrender. And just the idea of literally surrender is just kind of letting go of false beliefs that I might have been carrying around, or things that I'm doing that just don't feel right for me, like things I might think I should be doing because other people say I should be doing them, so I'm doing them that way. And I just kind of think to myself, I give myself that space in the mornings to think about what is bothering me, what's kind of laying on my heart, what are the things that are making me agitated later in the day. Like, it's probably not the fact that my family is doing something wrong, right? It's
Yeah.
something else getting to me that's escalating me, so that whenever they're escalated, I'm even more escalated. So that really helps me just find what I need to let go of, is that routine that I've been able to build in. And a lot of what I let go of to be able to wake up earlier, it was just kind of mindless scrolling at night, things that would keep me up later. But right now, through kind of this routine of surrender, something that I'm letting go of that seemed to be a good thing is just the amount of content I was trying to create, the amount of work that I was trying to put into the world. I'm just able to, as I kind of go through the morning reflection and the morning routine, I'm able to think about what actually does matter to me, and what does a full day look like for me? Does, like, a happy kind of full day, not
Yeah.
full as in spilling over, too much going on. And for me, I was working too much. It was more like my life was fitting around my work from home instead of my work was fitting around my life, which was why I wanted to work from home in the first place. So I have been able to let go of a lot of that. There's so much noise out there telling us, if we're content creators or working online in some way, that we have to constantly be putting something out there to stay, quote unquote, ahead of the game or whatever.
Yeah.
But I just don't want to be in that competition. So that's
No.
something I
Yeah,
want to
that
let go of.
mainstream discourse that productivity equals value and busyness
Yeah.
equals success.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, my big one is that I do nothing out of obligation. Like I don't believe in obligation. Like obligation feels like a religion almost, particularly to, again, women. Like I feel like they struggle with this a lot. And I hate to be like gendered and all of that. I really try not to do that. But just in all of my work, I have seen that disproportionately women shoulder more of the burden when it comes to obligation. And I really don't believe in that. So anytime I'm doing something out of obligation, I really work to let that thing go. But it can even be really practical things. Like one of my coaching clients recently, every morning when she woke up, she would, no, it was every night before she went to bed, she would clean the playroom after the kids went to sleep so that it was reset for them for the next day. And we worked through, because she didn't have time, quote unquote, right, to do like the really important elements of self-care that were going to help her. And we really had to think through like that worst case scenario. Okay, worst case scenario, you didn't clean the playroom at night after the kids went to bed. What would happen? Like what would happen in the morning when they woke up? Like, and just really thinking through those worst case scenarios can be super helpful, because oftentimes we're doing things and we feel like this is absolutely like life or death. This has to be done. But when we really start to question, like, well, does it really need to be done? Oftentimes
Right.
the answer is no. Like no one's going to die if that's not done. So I don't really recommend cleaning your kids' space when they're not present for it anyway, lest they think magical fairies come through and clean up after them.
So true.
Yeah, like simplify the play environment, set up the storage so that they can manage it well, and just let it be. Like it's their space, let it be. Let the natural consequences be what they are, and everybody will survive and everything will be fine. So if you're doing a lot of things and you feel like I don't have time, I want to challenge you to let go of like 50% of the things that you're doing. Like, yes, your children need to be fed. Okay, sure. But even your calendar, like we don't commit to being anywhere before 11 a.m. That's like part of our morning routine. It's like absolutely precious to us, and we hold the space for it. And a lot of people would say something like that is not possible. Like it absolutely is. Like there are a tremendous amount of things on your calendar that if you just didn't do them, everybody would survive. Like the world would keep turning. So I just want to challenge people to like unbusy themselves to free up some space so that you can have white space, A, and then B, actually do the things that are really essential.
Yeah, because I think we often don't, we have these things in our heads that we want to be able to find time for, we want to be able to do. That idea of going nowhere before 11 a.m., not leaving the house before 11 a.m. might sound amazing to someone and they might think this would be perfect for my family, but it's not possible. And then we don't take the next step to just look at our days. And I always
Yes.
encourage people to list out every single thing that you are doing in a day. It
Yep.
might take 20 minutes or so to do that, but and so you don't have to do this all the time. It's just one time to really look at and think about what is my time going to compared to what I want it to be going to. Because if we just keep living how it is and with this abstract idea of, oh, I wish this was what my life felt like or looked like, but I'm just going to keep doing what it currently feels like and does, then we're not taking ownership of our life and we are not going to live like our fullest life that we can.
Yes, don't move through your routine unconsciously. Yes, I love all of that. It's really quite empowering to consciously curate how you spend your time and your energy on the daily. And I want to call some attention to a shift in language, which you just alluded to. So it was perfect segue, Desiree. I
Yeah,
can't.
good.
I can't becomes I choose not to. Or for the things you do want to choose, I can't becomes how can I? And what would that look like? Say money is a daily struggle for you. It weighs on you and is a source of stress. I can't become debt free becomes how can I become debt free? What would it look like for me to become debt free? What is one small thing I can do every day to grow into the person I want to be and the lifestyle that I want to live? We just talked about how oftentimes in our schedule, there are so many things that feel immovable. And I tell people like everything is movable. Like call into question every single thing. And I want to like take that a step further into like your identity, like how you view yourself and the world and your place in it. And language can be a really powerful tool for that. So what's something that you used to say I can't about that you now realize you absolutely can?
Yeah, so this has really been a recent endeavor in my life over the past few months because last year, towards the end of last year especially, I was feeling like really low energy and unhealthy in general. And I have always been, or I shouldn't say always, for the past few years, I've always been somewhat active, just like the normal amount of active, of enjoying my life, enjoying being moving and being outdoors and maybe going to a workout class every once in a while because I truly enjoyed it. I've never been the type of person to be on a stringent workout routine or anything like that. It's just this idea of moving our bodies because we're meant to move and be healthy in that way. And so I found that last year, especially towards the end of the year when it was winter, I was telling myself, I can't find time to work out, or I can't find time to get out of the house for a walk, or I just can't get out of the house for a walk because it's too cold and it's too much to get my toddler ready to get out there and put all the layers on. It's just silly things that obviously I can do those things, but it did. And it's funny because whenever you sent conversation points over and I saw this is a huge mindset shift that I made that has helped me really stay consistent for the past 2 months of just getting outside for a walk almost every single day. I mean, even in the rain, we take umbrellas and little, whatever. We don't even have the proper clothing for it, but we just get out there. It's okay to get wet,
Yes.
And it has made all the difference. And even just what the food that we're nourishing ourselves with, it's not perfect. It's just this idea of prioritizing it and enjoying cooking it and all these things that I told myself I can't do or I don't like doing it. I'm just changing the language of that. And one of the language changes that I made was can't versus won't, which comes from a lot of different people, but I've heard more recently Marie Forleo say it. And that kind of puts it kind of makes it a little bit negative seeming or a kick in the pants type of way
Yeah.
of saying, if I'm saying I can't find time to do something, replace it with I won't find time to do something. Because really, just like you said, everything can be called into question. Everything is movable. Even the things like, well, even if you said, I'm a stay-at-home mom, like I have to feed my kids. Of course, you could make the choice not to. Everything is movable. Like because you are a responsible adult, you are choosing to take care of your family, and that's good. Even if there's like medical issues in your family, you're choosing to take them to those appointments, and that's a good thing. But if we take ownership over every little thing, then it helps us not play the victim card of when it comes to the things that feel more movable, like, oh, I could just avoid that forever, like moving our bodies or whatever it might be, by saying I can't do that. Then we can say, oh no, I'm really choosing not to. I'm really saying that I won't do it. So how does that make you feel when you say I won't do it, whatever it might be? And for me, I didn't feel good about that because I felt like I was putting myself in a bad place with my health.
Oh, yes. So many gems in what you just said. Yeah, that I can't becomes I won't or I choose not to. And even in that example of food, like it's my responsibility to provide my children with food. That doesn't mean that I'm in the kitchen cooking 3 meals a day. Like within that requirement, there is an immense spectrum and endless possibilities of what that could look like. So for example, even when my kids were toddlers, I would, when I got home from the grocery store, like wash and portion and put in accessible shelves food that my kids could go and help themselves to at any time. And I never made lunch. Like that just wasn't part of our daily routine. It wasn't one of our habits. Like they would throughout the day just go and help themselves anytime that they were hungry. Like, so there's just such a variety of ways to meet different needs that people have. And I want everybody to get really empowered, and the language can be so essential in that. And if there's something that you really want to do, like you said, like you wanted to get out and you wanted to move, and when it was time to actually do it, all of the steps to get there felt too overwhelming. One sort of hack to help you do that is to break it down into much smaller steps and just do one at a time. So maybe the first step in something like that is that first, you want to use the environment. So maybe you lay out the clothes every single night before you go to bed to get outside the next day. Or every morning you lay out the clothes for after nap when you're going to take a walk. So the shoes are sitting right by the door, or we don't even wear shoes when we go out usually. So you don't even need shoes. But whatever it is that you need, like lay it all out. So we're trying to make it so that it's so stupid simple. Like the decision's already been made, the environment's all set up for it, but break it down into a really small step. So maybe the habit that you're forming is just that we put on shoes every day at 1:00, like or right. After nap or whatever. After nap every day we put on shoes, and that's it. Like that's the only that you're just working on. That is the habit that you're building. Great. So once you're totally comfortable with that, then you add on the next piece. Like okay, so we put on shoes and a jacket. Okay, so every day after nap, we wake up, we go potty, we put on shoes and we put on a jacket. Like you're just adding, like break it down into much smaller chunks, like if the whole thing feels too overwhelming. And the funny thing happens, like if you're sitting in the house in shoes and a jacket, you wind up going outside, right?
Right.
Like exactly. It's much easier for the current of those initial steps to carry you through the rest of the way. So how do you recommend people get started if they want to build some quality new habits into their routine?
Yeah, so I think the first thing, and we kind of talked about it with the struggle idea, identifying the struggle, but also taking it kind of that step further of deciding why you actually want to be doing this and making it deep enough to make a real difference in your life. And for my example with the mornings, I was cranky waking up. I knew that I, like, as an introvert, and even before I was a mom, like a lot of things can point to the fact that I probably need some space when I wake up. And I knew that I wanted to be a happy person and a happy mother whenever for the rest of the day. So that was a deep enough why for me because I just didn't want to live like that to where I was cranky for the first hour of the day. And then it got even deeper when I started working on my podcast and everything else that I do in the morning. I want this time to work on my creative work. I want this creative work to become an income for my family. So those deep reasons and those deep whys, whatever you want to call them, kind of compelled me to actually do the thing. Another idea to kind of partner with that is to make whatever that routine is enjoyable in some way, like some small thing that you really look forward to at that time of day. Or if you are trying to work out or go for a walk, whatever it might be, make sure that you have the music that makes you the happiest. And not necessarily on a walk. I recommend kind of listening to nature, really. That's the best music, or talking with your family if you are on a walk with family. But if you're working out, for me, when I started listening to music that made me really happy, I looked forward to it, or build it into a time of the day where this really gets to be time for you to take care of yourself. So pairing kind of a deep why with something that you truly enjoy that you will look forward to within that routine. And then my second recommendation is to start small. So kind of like what you were saying with those kind of making those little steps within the routine so that you're not trying to do it all at once, but also not to overhaul like 50 things at once or your entire day all at once. You might have several habits or several routines that you'd like to establish, but just start that one thing that feels maybe like it's going to be the most beneficial or the one that you're most excited about, and start it today if you can. If it's attached to a certain time of the day and that time of the day has already passed, then start it tomorrow, but don't push it off. Don't listen to this today and then think, well, okay, great. Tomorrow is Monday. So if you're listening to this on a Sunday for some reason, so I'm going to wait to start then. Or, attaching it to a day of the week or whatever that would be better to start. Just do it. Just start that routine as soon as you possibly can, because making that first intentional choice to do it is going to empower you to make that intentional choice to do it again tomorrow and the next day. And then I feel like now that I'm looking at what I'm talking about, what I wrote down, the next one, change your language. We already talked about that. So do that. What we talked about, change the language. And then because, it just helps so much to take ownership over our choices. We live so often in that victim mindset or just like this passive way whenever we really do have power over our days and we can take ownership over our choices. And then the last thing is dealing with the amount of time it takes to establish a routine. So there's a lot of different research. There's a lot of different people that say different amounts of times that you need to establish a routine. But a friend had shared with me this, and it comes from James Clear. And he says that doing something for just 5 consecutive days is going to help in the beginnings of habit formation. So that doesn't mean that after 5 days you're good. You can tone it down and just, go on autopilot. But it means that kind of those other obscure times that people say, like 14 days or 21 days or 30 days, they can feel kind of overwhelming. It can feel like, okay, I'm going to, you start excited and ready to go and think, okay, I'm going to wake up early for just 14 days, see how that feels. But then come day 3 or 4 even, you're just thinking, I'm just going to sleep in today. So if you can just think to yourself, okay, I'm just going to try this for 5 days and then reevaluate, see how it feels. Because 5 days feels really attainable. And then after that 5 days, you can decide that maybe this wasn't, the best time of day for me to do this, or maybe I need to try it this way. So I like to think of that 5 consecutive days thing. I mean, some routines, maybe they won't be consecutive days, but with habit, I think that is super helpful.
Yes, research shows that layering on just one at a time, like you said, gives you the best odds for long-term success. So hopefully you're listening to this and you're feeling so excited and you want to set up a whole new routine and you have all these amazing ideas. definitely great. Write them all down. You can work on a plan for them, but actually just layer on one at a time. And that's going to give you the best chances of success. And James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, I highly recommend it. And in it, one of the things he talks about is habit stacking, which is where you attach a new habit to an existing one. So for example, if you want to, I don't know, write in a journal every morning and you already get up and drink a cup of tea at the table every morning, you can attach writing in the journal to drinking your tea. So every time you drink your tea, you're writing in your morning journal. So something like that, where you just connect one habit to an existing habit, that can really help you be successful. I love you pointing out like being super clear on your why. Like I completely agree, that's essential. And I mean, I said like look to the struggles and you can build support in for them. And I really mean any struggle. Like if you have like a health struggle, like a medical struggle, like I have like an autoimmune GI issue, and I asked myself, okay, what is one thing I can do every day to help support that? And I make myself a cup of peppermint tea every morning. And it has made a massive difference because it's like this compounding effect of doing something every day. It really does make a difference. So no matter how big the challenge feels or how hard it feels, just think of one small thing you can do every day, and that will help you to get clear on that why. You alluded to like the reward piece, like make it something enjoyable or put some sort of enjoyable component in there. And I completely agree. Thinking of some sort of, in this podcast, I have talked about how we don't like rewards, like how they're not good in the parenting world. But in the context of establishing new habits, you can use that word to help frame out that concept of making it enjoyable, making some component of it feel rewarding. So like my husband on his lunch break every day at work, he goes to the gym and he runs on this treadmill thing and he watches this show that he can't watch at home, like when the kids are around because it's too violent. So that is like a reward, right? I mean, it just happened like he's there in the gym. It helps him tune out to like the people around him. But really that's the reward. Like when he's sitting there in the office thinking about, okay, am I going to go to the gym today? It's like, well, I want to see the next episode of that show.
That's awesome.
Yes. And he only has time to watch one episode each time he goes. So it works out so well. Like that's the reward. So make sure there's something in it that feels like a rewarding to like that lizard feels like a reward to that lizard part of your brain. So hopefully you guys have like a good sense of how to get started with this stuff. But if you do want to learn more, I love James Clear's Atomic Habits. It's a really, really good book with some solid tips for that. Like you said, with the amount of time it takes to establish a new habit.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great book, and I feel like it's helped me build habits out of things that like working out that seem like in my head this is not going to be enjoyable, but I can make it so that, it is self-care. It is truly caring for myself, so I can make it more enjoyable on top of that to get myself to do it.
Yeah. And while we're at it, let's lower the bar for success. So if your family is never outdoors and you want more time in nature, don't start by committing to 8 hours every Saturday, completing an expert level hiking trail through the national park an hour away. Like, I know we said start small, but like, I really want you all to hear that. Like, start small. I mean, walk to your mailbox. Like, you can literally start there. Find a good walk within 10 minutes of your house and commit to spending just 15 minutes there. Not even any distance. Like, you don't even have to have the intention of walking. Just say, like, the thing that you're going to build into your routine is that you're going to drive the 10 minutes and get out of the car and be in this space for 15 minutes. Just be physically present on the trail and take one deep breath. Like maybe you add that. So you see, we're just kind of like layering in things and then eventually building up the routine. And that feels totally doable, right? Like when it's something that's like really small. So the power here is in growing the muscle of holding space for your needs. That is actually the hard part. Once that muscle is strong and the habit is established, the rest is easy. You can always build it up. So Desirae, share with us a time when you lowered the bar for success.
Yeah, so this is going to sound kind of silly, but in that time where I realized that I was just not moving enough at all. And I have hesitated to share about this, honestly, because I feel like people think if you have toddlers, then chasing them around, you must be moving like crazy. But that's just not how our day looks. I'm not constantly chasing after her. I mean, sure, she moves a lot, but I don't have to chase her. And yes, I do things around the house and we do things together, but it's just we live in a small house. So I started to get in this mindset of frustration of I can't find a way to do this. I can't find a way to move enough in the winter, specifically. In the summer, it's not a problem, or, the other times of the year. In the winter, in this house where we are. But something I did, I wear fitness tracker, and it sounds ridiculous, but I started telling myself, okay, that 10,000 steps thing, I know it's obscure and it might not even matter or whatever, but in my head, it just was a measure of I'm not moving enough if my fitness tracker says 5,000 steps at the end of the day. And it kept saying something like that. And I just kept thinking, how is this? Like, I feel like I'm on my feet a lot. I feel like I'm doing a lot, but I'm obviously not getting outdoors and doing things that are going to make me a happier person anyways, because again, we need to move. So something I did that sounds so silly is I set my goal to 9,000 steps, which is still much higher than I was getting most days when I wasn't moving a lot. And for some reason, that small lowering of the bar made me feel like, okay, this might be achievable. And I would take my daughter for a walk around the block, even in the cold. We would bundle up and walk around the block. And I would notice that walk around the block would give me momentum to then come home and maybe do something. We have a little tiny home gym area in our garage, but it's a more of an open space. So we would play a little game in there or something like that. And we would do yoga on YouTube. There's toddler yoga on there that we would do. And it was just little things that kind of lowering that bar for that goal started to get me moving more. And now I still like the tracker because it kind of keeps me accountable, but it's amazing that it kind of comes naturally to move now. So I know that sounds like a ridiculous example.
That does not sound ridiculous
bar.
or silly at all. That is exactly a perfect example of what we're talking about with lowering the bar for success to where it suddenly feels accessible. Like when I'm trying to work on a book, if I sit down and say, okay, write a chapter today, I won't sit down to do it. Like that's too overwhelming. I can't even say a page. So I have learned that for myself, I have to sit down with the intention of writing one paragraph. Like that's it. So I just sit down to write one paragraph. And if I write one paragraph, no matter how small it is, that is my bar for success. And that feels easy and totally accessible for me. And some days I write pages when I sit down to write. But the intention, like the actual part of the routine that I am building in a structure for, is one paragraph, which again, to some people might sound silly. But for me, that's what sort of unlocks, it removes my resistance. Like it really, that's really what it boils down to. Like with yoga, I do yoga every morning. And at first I was feeling like blocked with it. Like I wasn't showing up for it until I committed to not doing it well. I was like, okay, I want to do yoga bad. Like that's what I'm going to build into my routine is doing yoga like a fool. Like I'm not very flexible and I look ridiculous when I do it. And I'm going to build that in as like the goal. That's the intention. That's the self-care routine that I'm going to do is I'm going to do yoga poorly. Like I'm going to show up with my whole heart and a fully present mind and a willing body, and I'm going to be foolish. And that allowed me to show up for it every day and to do it every day. So like if you're feeling blocked or resistant to something that you're trying to work on, think about how you can lower the bar for success.
Yeah, it's so good because we just get this idea of what other people say is success in our heads for anything in life, but just for whatever that might be. And if we just kind of take it into our own hands and say, well, this is what success would actually look like for me right now in this season. and we go towards that, it makes all the difference and it makes it actually achievable for us.
Yes, on the parenting side, I talk a lot about how you have to meet your kids where they're at, and then you can, like, if a parent wants, if there's a transition on the horizon, I say, and parents come to me and say, how can I help them transition? You meet them exactly where they're at, and then you take one small step forward together. So if you want, like, to teach your kid to read, the routine can't be like, I'm going to sit down and they're going to read a chapter in a book. Like, you got to meet them where they're at and lower that bar for success. And it really is like a snowball. Like, once you show up every day with the intention and to dedicate, so you hold some space for it, you dedicate some time and energy to it, the skill and the ease rapidly starts compounding.
Yeah. And it matters to us too. Like, for our kids, it works for our kids and it works for us. I love that.
Yes. It's funny, like, in our minds, people see, like, how to relate to children and how to take care of ourselves as two totally separate things, and they are the exact same thing. Like, every single thing that I talk about with adults is the exact same thing with kids, and vice versa. Everything I talk about with, like, relating to kids and helping kids, I mean, it all applies to you too, and to relating to other adults. We are actually all human beings. I know that might surprise some people, but it's all the same. We're all human. All right.
Exactly.
Your environment is your biggest ally. You need to make it so easy to follow through that it would be more work to avoid it. So clear away all the clutter and distracting noise, so all that remains are the tools, materials, and space for your routine. For example, on my nightstand, I have my Kindle, my embroidery, and our family read aloud book. There is nothing else on that nightstand. These are the materials I need for the points in my routine that happen in my bed. When I was first starting to establish that yoga everyday routine, I had to lay the yoga mat out so that it was out and laying there the night before. So in order to move through the rest of my routine, I would literally have to step over the yoga mat and it would be in the way. Like that, You have to set it up to that extent so that it's easier to do it than to not do it. So what things have you set up in your environment to support your routine?
I would say that overall, the biggest thing for me is just to know where things are for whatever it is that I need to do. And whether that's having them right in the space they need to be, like my journal is on my desk and my computer is on my desk. The things that I want for the morning are on my desk rather than, scattered throughout the house. Not that I won't, those things don't necessarily help me wake up, because that is a block that people get into with morning routines, is just getting up in general. But those things do help me once I am awake and once I'm there, actually go through the parts of the routine that I want to go through, rather than, skipping over something or getting frustrated first thing in the morning because I can't find something. And same with if I'm trying to get outside with my daughter and things are all over the place, and I'm speaking from experience because it happens that her jacket isn't in the right place or her shoes aren't in the right place. So setting those things up does make a world of a difference. I can't say that I do that all the time. I am kind of, while I talk about minimalism, I can be a messy person. It's something I'm still unlearning or relearning, or however you want to say it. Is just that everything has a place, and everything does have a place. I just don't always put it there. But I can speak from experience that if I don't put it in its place, if I don't set it up, it will be more of a roadblock, especially if the routine isn't as established yet.
Yeah, it's a really powerful force. So just to keep that in mind for everyone listening, like, as they're trying to build these routines, like vitamins and supplements, that's another example. Like, I used to keep them like in a drawer in this cupboard, and they were tucked away. And when they were, I never took them. I didn't, even though I know exactly where they are. Like, I mean, in theory, it wouldn't really be any more work for me to open that drawer and take the vitamin. But if all of what I do now is all the vitamins and supplements are like decanted into mason jars, and they're all on this open shelf in the kitchen, and we take them every single day. If they are in a drawer, we do not take them. It's so silly, right? Like, it seems like such a small thing. You're just opening a drawer. Like, that would be so easy. but it's not. And so on the flip side, because I don't like to live in a cluttered space, we really remove anything that is not directly serving us in this season. So the vitamins and supplements, they have a shelf because they are serving us in this season. We use them every day. And the stuff that we don't is either gone, like we've let it go, or it's put away because we're not using it every single day. Another example is like I make a smoothie every morning, like this really healthy smoothie. I have all of the dry ingredients, again, like decanted in glass jars on the open shelf, and the blender lives on the counter. I don't keep other stuff on the kitchen counter. So like when I watch like home shows, like I love HGTV, and every time they remodel the kitchen, like the counter's like full of shit. Like that would drive me crazy, you know? It's like all these wooden cutting boards and recipe books, and I don't have any of that, but I do have the stuff that I use every day, like the things that will help support the self-care routines the habits that I am trying to lean into that help to nourish us in various ways. So just to look at your environment through that lens, like what can I set up? How can I set up the environment so that my routine and these habits that I'm trying to establish are supported?
Yeah. And I know that too, just mess in general, like clutter in general, is going to, for a lot of people, be a roadblock. And it is for me too. If things are out of place, if I'm not I just do quick resets of the house at certain parts of the day, and just to pick things up or, reset the kitchen, whatever it might take. Usually I just do it in the evening. And if I don't do that for a couple of days and things are kind of out of place, that can be a roadblock in my head, because I think, well, it's more important that I can get this mess taken care of. So the less stuff you have, and the more you can kind of put a little short routine, the less stuff you have, the less time it's going to take to do that and to put that all away. But the more you can put a little routine around that, the less that's going to get in the way, because I do think that is an excuse that is easily used of just, how can I find time to take care of myself when I can't get a hold of my house and everything's a wreck? And, it's an excuse that is somewhat valid, because I'm not saying that you should make that excuse and use it, but I think that we validate it because really mess and clutter does give us anxiety, and it gets in the way of things. So we have to take care of that to be able to make our routines run seamlessly.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's so helpful when the environment and the routine are like aligned. There's something really powerful that happens when those two things are in sync. And it can be as simple as like the bathroom, for example, because that's just such a simple room to start in. Like write down what you want your morning and evening routine to be in the bathroom. Like what things do you really want to do? How do you want to nourish your body or your mind and your soul, like in that space, and write it down and try to simplify, like keep it as simple as possible. And then set up the environment based on that routine. It's funny because we typically set up our spaces like they're not based on our routine. I couldn't even tell you what we're basing them on, because they're so often like with coaching when I'm helping families and I'm looking at this space and like what went into the decision to place this here,
Yeah.
I want you to like base those choices, like take a fresh look at your space and base them on the actual routine that you're going to be moving through in that space. How can this space support this routine or these habits that I want to move through when I'm here in this space? Like I was doing coaching with someone who was working on transitioning away from wearing makeup every day, and 75% of her bathroom counter was makeup. Like it was, there was like 100 things of makeup like out on the counter. Like really use your environment. It's like a simple example, an illustrative example, but you can really use your environment to hold the space for the routine that you want to move through. So I just want to like pull that from the subconscious part of people's minds to the conscious part of people's minds, and just encourage people to get those things in sync.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I do think that we just like move into a home or remodel a room or whatever we're doing and just kind of set things up based on, oh, how I would like it or how it should look or how someone else tells us that would go there well. And if we think more about the purpose of that space, it makes all the difference.
Yeah, and I have to say, it's like that can be hard to resist because there are times like when I'm taking pictures of my house, like to post about something, and I like will feel the urge to like change something
Yeah.
so that it looks like better, quote unquote. And I always push back against it. I always resist. I'm like, no, this is what it looks like, and I'm hoping. It's probably completely futile, but I feel like it's like normalizing setting up our environments for our routines, like for what actually helps us live our best lives, which is not necessarily the same thing as a house being magazine ready. I was listening to a podcast the other day, I think it was The Minimalist, and they had Bobby Burke on from Queer Eye, and he was saying that he had this house and he loved this house and it was set up in a very minimalist way and it was going to be shot for a magazine. So he had his team come in and they brought in like thousands of dollars worth of stuff, and then they took the pictures and then he came back into space and was like, okay, now get it all out of here immediately. And like, and I feel like so many of us do that.
Yeah.
I mean, on a smaller scale, but like, why do we do that? No. Okay, so that's like a little rant that I just had to get on my soapbox on for a minute here. Let's talk about reflections. So my days are supported by bookends. I find that the morning and the evening routine are actually really well served with like a yin-yang relationship. For example, I read nonfiction in the morning and fiction in the evening. And like both the sunrise and the sunset have a version of the same piece. I take, like, you might take a shower in the morning and you might wash your face in the evening. There's like this cleanse thing that has a bookend. So are there any reflections between your morning and your evening routine?
Yeah, I would say that the biggest thing that is the same between each is just this idea of like in the morning, or I don't know if it's the same. I guess it really is bookends of in the morning I'm kind of getting myself ready for the day and reflecting on who I want to be in the day, while in the evening it's more of kind of a closing, not necessarily like closing myself, but closing my home down or closing,
Yeah.
I reset and do the dishes, and it's almost kind of like I have come to enjoy that, and I listen to something that is enjoyable for me, whether I even sometimes just put a show on my iPad and prop it up against the window, which doesn't maybe sound like the most intentional routine ever, but for me it's just something that helps me kind of decompress and close the home for the day. So it's definitely more intentional and reflective in the morning, while in the evening I am kind of doing the things that would, I don't know, just close out the day, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It can be as simple as like you open the shades in the morning and you close the shades in the evening. I have found I actually sort of came to this understanding through doing a lot of sleep coaching, like with little ones, and how essential it is, like to look out the window and then close the shades. It's sort of and then in the morning, like you open the shades and you look out the window. Like things like that really help to set our circadian rhythms. And it seems like such small things, but really having those bookends, like a sunrise and a sunset to your routine where they have like some pieces that are reflections of each other, can be really, really powerful on this like cellular evolutionary level. It's like back when we lived outdoors, like way back when, a lot of this happened just for survival, like where there were these, you kind of had to move through these routines with bookends, with symmetry. And as we've moved indoors, we've sort of moved away from that. But when you can bring some of that back in, I find that people sleep better, they wake up easier. It has a lot of benefits that I've observed. So it's just another thing to sort of keep in mind as you're designing out your routine, that look at the bookends, like how you can sort of hold your day.
Yeah, I love that. And I honestly want to make my evening routine a little bit more intentional than it is. So I love the idea of reading fiction in the evening, because reading kind of stills you, and it's also not, being on a screen in the evening is not always good, which sometimes I do watch a show while I wash the dishes, but that's not the last thing I do before bed. But yeah, I like that idea. I might have to do that.
Feel free to steal the idea.
I might have to.
Morning, I love reading nonfiction because it sort of gets my brain firing. And then in the evening, I love reading nonfiction because that really allows the logical part of my brain to quiet, the part that results in me writing and creating things. I need that part of my brain to get quiet at night. And so reading fiction stimulates the dream part of my brain, the sort of allows the subconscious to lounge out and spread out a bit more. And it's, the storying. And for me, a lot of times the fiction looks like the family read alouds because my kids are a little bit older now. So the read alouds are legit, they're good books. And so we read loads of chapters from fiction every night. And then I will often turn on an audiobook for myself. But I try to do fiction, nonfiction, and have those bookends. So yeah, just to think in terms of that yin and that yang, that can be really helpful. Another thing that I find to be really important is to flow in one direction through the routine with sequencing, geography, energy. When you move from the first thing to the second thing, from the bedroom to the bathroom to the great room, from quiet to loud, from slow to fast, there's a current that moves you through the routine effortlessly. It's very hard to fight against that current and go back to do something that you skipped over, or go back into the other space when you've already moved on to the next space. Have you ever tried to go back and do something that you skipped over in your routine, and how hard did that feel?
Yeah, I actually, my mind will do this to me often in the mornings, and it's gotten a little bit better because I am working less. I'm just choosing to work less right now in this season. But if I have some kind of deadline or something that, because work is part of my morning routine, I will sometimes, it's just it's on my mind when I wake up. And so I'll come into my office and I will just skip over the whole thing where I make coffee and then journal, and I'll open my computer and I catch myself and I close my computer 10 seconds later, and then I go back and I do it. But it definitely does disrupt kind of the flow and the ease, because then just that act of opening my computer, already, if that was on my mind waking up, now it's even more on my mind, and I'm just kind of wanting to rush through the other things, which I don't want to be rushed through those things, because those are really the more important part for me to get my mind right. So yeah, that's definitely true for me. And it's funny because that's another thing that is so true for, at least for toddlers.
Yes.
If I skip something in a routine that we have together, it's just there's no going back. And
Yes.
It's another way where we're all humans. We're all the same.
Exactly. Yes. Most of these learnings, I came through working with kids and helping people with kids and seeing what helps them to be their best selves and to take care of the things they need to take care of. And then I realized oh, this helps me to
Yeah.
to do all of my things too. It's another one of those bookend or reflection things that I have is that I journal intentions in the morning and I journal gratitude in the evening. And the journal lives on my nightstand. If I get out of bed and go into the bathroom and go to the bathroom and brush my teeth or whatever, I won't go back into bed and journal my intentions for the day. I just won't. No matter how much I want to, there's just this the good news is that you can use that to your advantage, because there is such a really strong current that pulls you in that one direction. As long as you're doing all of the things in the various spaces, it's much easier to move through them. But just to be aware that it's really difficult to go back and do something once you've already moved beyond that space. But it can be really helpful, and to keep that in mind when you're setting up your routine and your habits as well, is that you really want the sequencing and the geography to be going in one direction. So don't set up in your routine that you finish everything in the kitchen, then you go into the bathroom and you take a bath and you brush teeth, and then you put on pajamas and you lay in bed, and then you go back out to the living room and finish the dishes. That is extremely difficult on your body and your mind and your willpower, Like just put everything in one direction through that sequencing, through geography, even through energy. We want to be like loud and playful. And then like as we go into the nighttime routine, we just start to move slower and we talk quieter. It's something that can happen really naturally when we're at our best. But if we can bring a little intention to it, it can help us to be our best when we're having a hard time.
Yeah.
All right, let's move into our Q&A. I asked the Sage family community what questions they had about habits, and lots of people wanted to know, what advice do you have for people struggling to find the balance between the needs of different individual family members?
So when I think about this question specifically, I first of all want to note that there are three people in my family. So I always will say, like, my biggest advice, if it comes to the fact where you feel like you're pushed in a million different directions because of the needs of individual family members, my advice is always to do less where you can and not feel the pressure that you need to involve your kids in every single thing. And when I speak to that, I realize that I have a toddler and I can't say that I can't speak for you and your three teenagers or whatever your life might look like. So I know it's different, but I just think that society, culture, whatever you want to call it, kind of in every area of life wants us to push for more. And that idea of you're a better parent if your kids are involved in more things is just, it's not true. So
Nope.
if you can do less, that's going to be better for everyone. And if you can put boundaries on that, that's going to be better for everyone in the family. But also just thinking about the idea of seasons, and there might be seasons where your family is busier and routines do take adjusting in those seasons. For us, we just came out of a really busy season for my husband. So his needs in that season were just totally different, and I could support him in that by making sure we were prepping food together at the beginning of the week so that he had food for all of the things he needed to do during the week, because his schedule was packed with a coaching season. And also, Gemma and I were on our own more during the weekends, so we took it super slow during this last season, because I knew that for myself, if I try to make the weekends busy while my husband isn't there, I'm going to, I like I said earlier, I'm an introvert. I have a lot of needs. Just one toddler takes a lot of emotional energy, and I want to be the best I can for her. So we took it really slow in this past season, but also my husband was taking it really fast, and now we're in a slower season in general. So our entire season, or our entire routine this week, looks totally different than it did last week, and we're adjusting. So that's kind of the other suggestion that I have, is just know that whatever routine you're setting up right now, make it flexible. If you have a family, as kids get older, things change, and whatever that might look like, just be flexible with your routines, and again, be empowered that the changes are not bad changes. If something has to change, that's not a bad thing. It's just an adjustment.
Yes. Oh, that was so good. Simplify, 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 and to contextualize everything in seasons. Like, I read about this all the time. I talk about this all of the time. You can do all things, but you can't do all the things at the same time. Like, so,
Yeah.
so to even in terms of like people's passions, like I have 6 people who live in my home. Like, my dad lives with us. I have 3 kids, and I can assure you that everybody is not doing exactly what they want all the time. One thing that I try, like a visual I try to use, is to think of everyone's needs like a Venn diagram, and you want to live in the overlap. And with some creativity, there is always a way. For example, if you need a physical movement practice and baby needs to be on your body, like practice baby wearing and go on a daily walk. And that's just like a really simple example, but there is always a way to do that with some creativity. So just try and be creative in looking at how you're meeting everyone's needs. There is always an overlap for people's needs. So just to live in that overlap, simplify, and then think about things in seasons. You don't have to do everything all at once.
Think about the fact that when we think of self-care, we so often think we have to be alone while caring for ourselves, but self-care can happen with our kids, with our family. I mean, just I've really come to enjoy cooking over the past couple of months. And, if I think about it like, wow, Gemma is getting in my way while I'm cooking because she wants me to do something else, and instead invite her into it. I can find a way for this not to be dangerous for her to be up here on the counter with me. I can find a way to teach her through that. And it's actually more fun if she's doing it with me. I find joy in it. So that feels like caring for myself and my family at the same time.
Yes, and I'm so glad you brought this up. I have an entire episode of this podcast on self-care in which we talk a lot about how you can meet your self-care needs while in connection with children. But I love that you're bringing it up in this episode, because that, I would say, is the biggest block or obstacle that I hear from parents, is that they feel like the existence and presence of their children is what is preventing them from meeting their needs, from their self-care, from their intentions, from building new habits and creating new routines that nurture them. And I 100% challenge that. Like, that is a false belief. So I really want people to fully take that in, that anytime you hear that voice that says, like, I can't do this because, or my kids are, I can't do this because I have kids, or I can't do this because my kid is here. I really want you to challenge that your kids are not the ones keeping you from building up these self-care habits. You can absolutely do all of these with your kids. You just might be meeting your needs differently. Again, like, you need a little more creativity. I was talking to a mom the other night that was saying she really wanted to be connecting more with her husband, but her toddler really needed her, and she didn't feel comfortable leaving her toddler with a babysitter. So this is where they were. It was like this point of impasse. Well, you can connect with your partner while your toddler is with you. So like I told her, so here's what you're going to do. We're going to get this carrier, and you're going to learn how to do the back carry, and you're going to go on a hike through nature every Sunday. And while you're on this hike, your toddler's going to be with you. She's going to have everything she needs. She's going to feel connected. She's going to be looking at nature, but you're going to be talking to your husband. You're going to be holding your husband's hand. You guys are going to be laughing together. You're going to be hiking together. So again, that Venn diagram, right? The little one needs to be with you, and you and your partner need some time to have some focused conversation, or to hold hands, or whatever it is. There is a way to meet all of those things at the same time. It just takes a little bit of creativity.
Yeah, that's so good.
All right, let's move into our deep dive. So the show notes can be found at rachelrainbolt.com/podcast44, where you can also subscribe and get future show notes sent right to your inbox. And I hesitated as I was reading that because it still has the old website in it. For those of you who don't know, I just did a total overhaul of my website. It's brand new, all new, and it's now at rachelrainbolt.com. So I know I need to talk about that more and send out an email and all that jazz. But yes, so for those of you who regularly go there to check the show notes, it's just now rachelrainbolt.com/podcast44. Of course, there's a redirect in place, so if somebody goes to look for old show notes, they'll still find them. But it's just my name now, so just so y'all know. All right, Desirae, what are your favorite resources for people to dive deeper into this topic? And be sure to tell us about your Simple Mornings routine.
So 2 resources that I have that people can kind of find me at and learn more about my take on routines and just what helps me establish new routines is, one, I have a mini course. It's short and condensed, and it kind of just goes through steps to help you with rhythms and routines in your life, and that can be found on my website at DesiraeEndres.com. There's a tab that says Minimalism and Motherhood. This is not the most direct route, I'm sorry. But it's a tab that says Minimalism and Motherhood up the top, and you'll find it there. It's called Simple, Purposeful Days. And the second resource is my Simple Morning List journal, and that is definitely a specific routine. And it does have, if you want a morning routine that is alone time for yourself, it has a 14-day challenge in there to help you set up a morning routine. And it's not just the journal. I do go through each list, which the lists are surrender, gratitude, purpose statement, which is not a list, but lists is kind of the catch-all thing, purpose statement, affirmations, and a focus list. So it goes through kind of the philosophy behind each list and everything like that. So if you want a morning routine and you want to add journaling into your day, it's a way to make journaling more approachable. It's, if you're not a writer, you're making lists, plus there is space to do further journaling, because I do encourage journaling, and less structured journaling. I think it's helpful as well.
I love it, and I've gotten a chance to look through it, and I love it. So I fully endorse it. If anyone's looking for something like that, I think it's a really great option. And I mentioned earlier just that for anyone who supports this show on Patreon, you get access to 8 secrets to a nourishing morning routine, where I lay out and describe a lot of the things that we talked about here today, but I also have sort of a template of the specific things that are in my morning routine and my evening routine, along with like some questions and some tips to help you set up your own routine. And then I also wanted to recommend the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, which we also mentioned earlier. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And then if you want to set up the routine for your kids, that is what my bucket system class is all about. So I will include a link to that too. We really focused on setting up a routine and self-care and building habits and all that for the parents. If you want to know about how I recommend doing that for kids, then the bucket system class is what you want. It's really how my kids move through their daily routines. Desirae, thank you so much for coming on again and talking to me about this topic. I know this is going to be a really popular episode because I get asked about this a lot, and I bet you do too, since you created all these amazing resources to help families with it.
Yeah, I definitely get asked about it a lot too, and I'm so grateful we got to talk about it. I love chatting with you, so I feel like I always learn so much from you too, so I'm grateful that you invited me back on.